Massachusetts, being an alumni of Harvard University. One of the items that I am anxious to discuss and talk about is the debacle that took place in Harvard Square this past week between a good friend of mine, Henry Louis Gates, and a local police officer from the Cambridge Police Department. It appeared as though this incident was going to disappear 2 days ago, but it has reemerged in the news cycle on CNN, MSNBC, and the Fox News Network as well. And so we want to hear from you. Two outstanding personalities in the person of Roland Martin and along with Michael Eric Dyson have talked a great deal about this incident. I am anxious to hear your words, your opinion, your commentary as it relates to our own opinion and being somewhat like the president, not knowing all of the specifics or all of the details. I am hard pressed to understand how it is an individual of the caliber of Dr. Gates, who is in his home, having that home invaded by a member of the police department, surrendering his identification, proving his ownership of the home. How such an individual arrested is a bit beyond my own comprehension. However, that is the case, and we're anxious to hear from you to get your perspective. I heard two personalities provide two perspectives today that I found most interesting and even fascinating. And so that's what we want to talk about for the next 15 or 20 minutes before we introduce our guests for the second half. But we want to hear from you. I'm delighted to welcome to our studio this evening, in the midst of all of this rain and inclement weather, Bishop Stephanie Riddle Green from the Joshua Baptist Cathedral. Good evening, Bishop. How are you? Dry, I hope.
Good evening, Bishop. No, I can't quite say that I'm dry. I've been showered by the weather, inclement weather. First, let me say to everybody that's out there and you're driving, please be careful. You have to be careful. Visibility is almost slim to none in some areas, which is what took us a minute to get here on today. Bishop, it's good to be here. Missed you on last Thursday. We were so very busy with a lot of the things that I have to discuss this week on our radio station. But to the listening audience, good afternoon, good evening, and hello to you.
Well, what is very interesting is as I have reviewed the delivery of the facts as they appear to stream from this incident, I heard a very interesting commentary that the Massachusetts Penal Code does not allow a person to be arrested for unruly conduct unless it is in public. And so the invitation to come outside, in the mind of many, was a setup, because if that same conduct had been behaved inside the home, it was lawful.
Right.
But once it appeared in public, it became unlawful. Yeah. And if he ended up outdoors at the suggestion, the behest, or even the instructions or the command of the police officer, then that's a whole different item. The question that I'm anxious to raise, the question that I'm anxious to raise for our listening audience, and when I first heard this, and I continued to hear it in the news cycle until it appeared to be quelled, and of course it has been resurrected in the last 24 hours. I was wondering if we as a community were not being oversensitive and overreacting to this situation. And of course, in the midst of a time when we spend so much time talking about a post-racial society in this new millennium, this item, coupled with the summer camp of about 2 weeks ago that was not allowed to swim in a certain swimming pool. Those items collectively cause us to wonder if in fact the society in which we're living is as post-racial as we really want to believe that it is. And I am reminded that prior to 1955, the years 1945 to 1955 was the most racially quiet in this country, and there seems to be this upsurge, this resurgence of identity consciousness and identity politics that happens on the heels of events. And of course, 1954, 1955, we have Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court decision. And then, of course, we have the boycott
Right.
in Alabama. And so when I kind of compare these things, and you know, one of my passions is history, and I see these cycles of history kind of repeating themselves. I think it is a major kind of question. I think also that the president is being treated somewhat unfairly.
Oh my God.
Those who have suggested that he is invading a
Yes.
local event, a local affair, and ought not provide any commentary. Every report that I have seen and heard on the president's comments have conveniently excluded what was obvious a question that led into those comments.
Right.
I do not believe, nor anyone I've talked to believes, that the president just voluntarily decided to speak on this issue. But he obviously was answering a question, and yet the question was excluded from all of the reports of what he